You're listening to The Jack Blood Show because you give a crap and you want to know what to do about it. Now let's get to work.
Here's Johnny.
We're live today. It is August 16th, the year 2012. No Agenda Global Radio and affiliates. I am again your narrator, your radio gun, Jack Blood, reporting. David Icke usually comes on about twice a year with us. I do consider him a good friend and a huge influence and inspiration on some of the work that we have done. I always tell this story when we bring David on because we started getting the handle on what the nature of how deep the conspiracies go all around us. You know, it freaked us out a little bit. And thanks to people like Maria Heller and David Icke, good friends of ours, you know, we kept a level head about it. And yeah, that love is the only infinite truth. Everything else is an illusion. Fear is control. These are some of the things that David Icke has talked about all these years, and he has been right about so many things. So we keep a very open mind to what he says. His website is davidicke.com. Here in about a month and a half, we'll talk about this. He'll be doing a global awakening at Wembley Stadium in England. He's been on a world tour just unlocking minds everywhere he goes. He is David Icke. Thank you, David, for being with us.
Hello, Jack.
Good to have you. How have you been, man? Are you taking care of yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. I've lost 16 pounds. I've got a bit fit. I feel very healthy, and I'm writing a book and getting ready for Wembley, which is like a 9-hour presentation, which I'm basically have started from a blank sheet of paper. So that takes a lot of getting together, and yeah, it's all going well, really.
How many people are going to be at Wembley?
The depressing thing is when you look at the news and see what's happening, but you know we have to counter that.
Yeah. How many people can show up at Wembley? How many people are you expecting there?
At the moment the maximum we can have is 5,500. So 5,500 at the moment, and we'll see how it goes from there. But it's an event that I wanted to do because I wanted to get a large number of people together. First of all, to make a statement about the fact that large numbers of people are now beginning to question the official story of life and not having it anymore, but also because we have gone through, Jack, this summer in England, almost a continuous ritual. First of all, with the Diamond Jubilee of the Queen, with all its ritualistic events, and then straight into the Olympics with its incredibly ritualistic opening and closing ceremonies. And, you know, what I'm finding interesting is even some of the more challenging and what people might call extreme things that I've talked about over the years are increasingly being encompassed by more and more people. And, you know, to understand what's happening in the world that we experience with our conscious minds, and to understand the true nature of the conspiracy, we have to realize that this world that we perceive as this solid world of the conscious mind is actually just an holographic illusion, and in fact, it's like a holographic movie screen. By the time we are experiencing it in our daily lives, it's hit the screen. It's like standing in a movie theater, complaining at the screen because you don't like what's being played on it. What would be the point of that? You're not going to stop the movie. It's hit the screen. It's happened. Done deal. But the question is that I've been asking all these years, because the greater understanding of how it works comes from this, and what we can do about it, is where does this projection come from? I mean, you know, you look at this extraordinary tapestry of interconnected change and imposition. Everything from the banking scams to manipulated wars to manipulated terrorist attacks and you know, mass killings, to the stuff they put in our food, the stuff in the water, the manipulation of the electromagnetic field in endless ways that's going on now. On and on and on and on it goes. Weather manipulation, stuff that they are adding to food that has electrochemical effects. All these things, and I've just listed a few, are all coming in at the same time. Okay, so either they've got an absolute army that is so coordinated that in the end, a few people sitting around a table discussing their next move can orchestrate this, or we're looking at something that is much greater and much deeper and much more profound. And it seems to me, after all these years, and I'm going to be talking about this at Wembley and in a book I'm writing now, is that what they're actually doing is encoding the electromagnetic field, if you like, the energetic level of this reality, with a pattern, with a projected change or pattern of change, and then it plays out into the holographic realm as this amazing synchronistic change. To put it simply, if you encode a sequence of events upon a computer disk, and you put the computer disk in the tower and press play, on your screen, that sequence of events, which on the disk is merely a series of computer codes, will play out one after the other in a sequence exactly as encoded on the disk. Something like that is going on.
David, let me first of all, for if you're new to listening to me and David, I let him talk most of the show because he's brilliant and I just love getting this time with him, and so he can talk to you. And even though I'll only talk a little bit during the interview, David, your fans will still think it's too much. But I have to interject a little bit here because you're talking about these computer codes in our brains and computer codes around us, that life is again kind of like a matrix, and it is really important to, if that is the case, find out who's responsible for this. I sent you a clip earlier today of a new movie coming out called Branded. And I want to just play a little clip of that for the audience to get you to comment on this, because it's exactly what you're saying. And it looks to me, this movie looks to me to be kind of a modern-day interpretation of the great movie They Live, which I know you've talked about quite a bit, as have I. So let me just play this clip for my audience, and it looks like life is... well, art's imitating life again, and they're trying to tell you something here. I think this looks really cool. So here it is. We'll just play this for a minute or two. There you go. Competition is a sin. So you have to kind of see the visuals to go with that, because what it basically is, David, is, if you've seen this, a Branded.
Yeah, I watched it earlier, yeah.
Is that the humans, in order to get consumers to buy stuff, plant this computer code into their brain so they'll do whatever they want. They can control their desires and to make money. But really, it's someone behind that is tricking them to induce that into people's brains so that they can be controlled on a much higher level. I mean, there it is.
Yes, it is, and branded can have a number of connotations, because we have a program in this country which is run by this guy Simon Cowell. I know in America,
American Idoler.
You want rubbish television, give Simon Cowell a call, and they have titles. One set of titles had this X coming past, X Factor that it's called. Passed through the Saturn rings, and other titles had it coming from the moon, which are very significant to anyone who's read my recent books. And this X flies towards the Earth and then hits the Earth and brands it, like a cattle brand. And in so many ways, the Earth is branded. It's branded with a fake reality, which we're decoding. And there's so many. I wasn't expecting to talk about this when I started off, but it's great, because this is deep stuff, and we're getting very, very close to how this is done, and how 7 billion people can be controlled by a handful, by controlling their perceptions. This is the key: their perceptions of reality, their perceptions of self, their perceptions of world events, the perception of everything. And I've been talking, as you know, Jack, for God knows so many years now, well back into the 90s, about this common theme in the ancient world of humanity being genetically manipulated. I mean, more and more people now are beginning to look at this and see the unbelievable common themes of the accounts from all over the world. And what I'm saying is that this genetic manipulation tuned the human form, which is at the body level. I call it a body computer. It's a biological computer. And DNA, which cutting edge of even mainstream science, or just off mainstream science now, ahead of mainstream science is accepting this now, is a receiver-transmitter system. That's what DNA is. And what your DNA is tuned to, it will pick up, and we will decode into the holographic reality, the world we think we're experiencing. It's exactly the same themes as the Matrix movies. And so what I'm saying is this genetic manipulation entuned the human receiver transmission system to a certain frequency. We call that frequency visible light. And so we pick up this ludicrously tiny band of information, which is known as visible light, which is so tiny it's unreal. And I suggest that there was a time before this genetic manipulation when the human range of what we call sight, but visual decoding into a reality we visually experience, was far, far wider than it is now. I mean, it's so tiny now. It's funny. What's that figure? Mainstream science says that what they feel exists in the universe in terms of mass, matter, and energy. The electromagnetic field is about 0.005% of that. And visible light, which is the only frequency range that we can decode into what we see, is a fraction of the 0.005%. This is what we're dealing with. And it seems to me that there is a manipulation of the information that we receive within that frequency, and what we call the electromagnetic range of frequencies. And then the question is, are we going to decode that information into a holographic version of it, our daily experience, or are we going to not decode that? And that...
Do we have the decoder? I mean, that's the whole thing. Let me cut you off there, because a lot of what you're saying we talked about on the last interview you did here at the first of the year. I think I was the first one to have you on in 2012 on Blood Bites World, which I've never heard you sound better, David. I mean, that's about 2 hours, folks, of just mind-blowing information just like this. But you lead me to another question, David, and that is something very coincidental, I guess we'll call it. James Holmes, who is the alleged orange-haired Joker shooter at Batman Rising, right, Dark Knight Rising? That is the Phoenix reference. In Aurora, Colorado, that is the City of Lights. That's the light bearer reference. But this is a guy who was highly advanced in mind sciences. In fact, he'd received one of the few grants in this country to study something called the temporal order, in which he himself says they have found a way to separate reality from what's real outside and reality in your head, which they can control. Temporal order, temporal reality, and this is the guy that went up and shot that theater up in Batman, allegedly, because, David, there's no witnesses that saw him do it. Unfortunately, there was smoke. The guy was wearing a gas mask. There were 2 gas masks. No one's explained that. So you've heard a lot about it. I'm sure you studied that Colorado shooting, and then I guess also the Wisconsin shooting with the guy who had worked with the Army's psychological operations unit before he did this shooting. We might even have him tied to Columbine. But because it is, I think, relevant to what you're talking about, here's James Holmes, this kid who's studying the mind sciences, and who is sponsored by the government, and who allegedly does this shooting with all of these coincidences and markers and calling cards by the elite Illuminati.
Yes, the background to James Holmes is just full of stuff linked to psychology, to mind manipulation, to reality manipulation. I mean, he was apparently being quote, treated or being seen by this psychiatrist, Dr. Lynn Fenton, at the Colorado University where he was. And then you've got Wade Michael Page, as you say, at the psychological operations specialist at Fort Bragg. And Fort Bragg in North Carolina has appeared in my books many times over the years, because it's one of the great centers of basically the war on the human mind. And this is the key here, because if there's a few of you and you want to control the many, you can't do it physically. You can do it in small areas with soldiers in the street and on the door and tanks in the street, but you can't do it to 7 billion people. You have to manipulate the way they see reality so that they then behave in a way that suits your agenda. And like I was saying, we have this information field that's being projected at us. It's this encoded blueprint for the way that the world is desired to change in the electromagnetic field. And then we have to be plugged into it. And if we are stuck, as most people are because of the nature of the way we're manipulated from cradle to grave, they're stuck in the level that they are decoding and perceiving reality only through the 5 senses overwhelmingly, then they are going to, without much challenge, they are going to decode this projected reality. But if you are conscious beyond the 5 senses, if your mind is open to the greater self, the greater consciousness, you have another point of reference. You have another point from which you can observe the world of the 5 senses. And those people do not, in the same way, decode this encoded projected agenda. They don't. And this is why those in authority are targeting those people. This is why they target anyone they think is open and more expanded in their awareness, because they are not going to get caught in the matrix like other people.
And that's the target. And of course, this guy being the face for all of us that might be like that. Again, we have a guy with orange hair. He looks like an occupier. The next guy is a Nazi. He looks like a Tea Party guy. We'll get to sectarian violence in a little bit. You mentioned Lynn Fenton, and let me pop this in again, so people missed our coverage on this. She was at Laughlin Air Force Base in San Antonio, where Jolyon West was studying, and we know their little mind control experiments.
Jolyon was a major CIA military mind controller.
And so she was basically his handler, is what we think, and maybe kept him quiet. I'm not sure if the guy was set up as a patsy or not, but there's just too many connections here, not to mention the fact that this kid grew up in San Diego, which is known to be a center of mind control and military exercises.
Yeah, and it's all there, and maybe partly they're getting lackadaisical in the way they're trying to cover these things, but also more and more people are getting more and more streetwise to see things that would have passed them by before. And it's interesting to me, Jack, where you see over and over and over again these movies now, which are what people call predictive programming. They are telling you what the agenda desires the world to be like. Now, I'm not saying that all of these are necessarily involved. One or two might be people trying to say, hey, this is happening, wake up. But a lot of them are put there on purpose. The question is why? What is this predictive programming? And it seems to me, in this theme that I'm talking about here, of this blueprint for the, whatever you want to call it, the new world, the Orwellian world, being actually in the ether, in the electromagnetic level of reality. And we have to be plugged into it so that we then decode that information collectively into holographic reality, which means what? We are being manipulated to decode into daily experience our own Orwellian prison. This is how it's being done, I would suggest. And all these movies that are saying this is, they're not saying it, openly, this is how it's going to be. But what they're doing is projecting to us in this increasing number of movies with the same theme, one after the other. They are telling us the world that they want it to be like. Now, what's that going to do? That is helping to tune us in to that reality, to tune us into that information field that we will then decode from the computer disk, if you like, onto the screen of daily experience, the world that is imprinted. So it seems to me, Jack, more and more, sounds crazy to many people. I really don't care. I'm interested in the truth, not a popularity contest. But it seems to me that we are being collectively manipulated to bring into reality the prison that's being encoded, if you like, on the symbolic computer disk. And this is why I keep saying to people, don't think, don't believe, don't accept that this reality has to happen. It doesn't. There's 7 billion people being manipulated. There's a handful doing the manipulating comparatively, and they're able to do it by keeping us in the dark from this stuff. You see, when you look at the Olympic opening and closing ceremonies, these people work with energy. They're trawling human energy. They're trawling human consciousness, and then they're recycling it back against us with this encoded reality. So when you get, and you know, it's a great saying and so true, energy flows where attention goes. Someone was saying to me the other day, isn't it amazing, you know, you feel that like you've got two eyes in your back, and you turn around and there's someone staring at you. It's like you can feel their eyes. Well, you can't feel their eyes. You can feel their focus. You can feel their attention, because when their attention is upon you, an electromagnetic, energetic connection is made by that attention. Now just think, Jack, when that flame was being created in that ritualistic way in the opening ceremony in London, an estimated 1 billion people worldwide were looking at that. Billions were looking at the closing ceremony, which was on a Sunday, and more people around the world could watch it. And you have that attention, and these people know how to draw that energy. They're always looking to get our attention, because by getting our attention, they get our connection, they get our energy. This is what
they don't call it a ceremony for nothing, David. But I have to take one of 2 breaks we'll take, and you'll be with us for a full another hour. Part of that is going to be backstage just for our archive audience, something special for you, a treat for you. I want to remind you to remember who you are, which is coincidentally enough the title of David's latest book, Remember Who You Are. And that is the thing. It's inside of you. You know who you are. You've just been tricked into thinking you're one of the sheeple out there. You're not. That is the important thing. And this book is amazing, David. You know, I've probably gone through it twice already. Can't wait for more books. I've read every one of your books, and I have an open mind. It's a real test sometimes for all of us, David, but I have an open mind. Speaking of the closing ceremony, Muse played the ceremony. When we come back, I want to talk about Muse. By the way, we didn't get to see that here, David. The CBS Cult of the Eye, they didn't show us the closing ceremony because they had to show a shitcom, as I call them over here. So we didn't even get to see that, whatever it was. But I want to talk about Muse because they had an interview a while back that we haven't played for our audience yet, kind of laughing at the reptilian thing and saying that the Illuminati is kind of a joke. They serve the Illuminati. Some of it, I think, is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but I'd like to play that for you and get your response. David Icke is with us, davidicke.com, playing at Wembley Stadium here, and we'll get the exact date on that in about 2 weeks. Stay with us, folks. Come right back after this. I am Jack Blood. This is the Jack Blood Show. We are live today, the 16th day of August, 2012, allegedly. David Icke is with us for the full hour. We are... We're peeling the onion. You know, you got to keep an open mind to all of this. I'm testing you today. If any of this upsets you or makes you mad, you got a little growing to do. I think that's the whole thing, and that's what David does so well, is he really tests you a little bit. And then I think, I don't know if you do that on purpose or not, David, but it works pretty good. If people get upset, that is because they're still living a little bit in their, excuse the term, reptile brains. You know,
well, the thing is, Jack, I don't do it on purpose. I have a very simple philosophy. I want to know what's going on, and once I reach a certain point in research and conclusion, then I talk and write about it. And how people receive it is up to them. It's none of my business how they receive it. It's their business. It's their right to make that choice. But you know, one of the greatest prisons that and the greatest forms of perception suppression that there is to limit people's sense of the possible. This is so important. And these bloodline families, and by the way, talking about bloodline, you mentioned Vlad the Impaler there. he is an ancestor of a blood ancestor of Prince Charles and the British royal family. You know,
George Bush and John Kerry.
Yeah, so when you follow these satanic blood-drinking, sacrificing bloodlines, you find some very interesting names. Anyway, what they understand, these bloodline families, is that if you can limit and suppress someone's sense of the possible, you will put them in a box in which you can manipulate them and the world in general through techniques that are beyond the person's suppressed sense of the possible. And when someone comes along and says this is how they've done it, then the limited sense of the possible goes, that's not possible, that's ridiculous, you're mad. And what I wrote an article actually relating to the shootings in James Holmes and the Wisconsin shooting, in which I was talking about this like standing wave in their head. Standing wave is when two waves of equal power hit each other and cancel each other out, and they start vibrating on the spot. It's like vibrationally running on the spot. And one standing wave in the mind is the lie, the official story, for instance, of James Holmes that you rightly say no one can prove because the guy who did it, and it certainly wasn't him. I mean, please, intelligent life calling planet Earth. But there's the lie. But because if you don't know, or you cannot absorb the fact that you can mind control people to do things, or you can mind control people to take the rap when other people do them, if you can't accept that, then you have no alternative in your head to the lie. So the lie is the only show in town, because you can't have an alternative to it.
No.
Because the lie keeps bouncing against your limited sense of the possible, which is, you can't mind control people to do that or do anything. No. And that is going on all the time. So when you look at the areas that I've already talked about, Jack, in this show today, for a lot of people, their sense of the possible, religiously or mainstream scientific, will be bouncing that back and creating a standing wave which is saying that's ridiculous, that can't happen, that Ike's mad, and all this stuff. And this is going on all the time. One of the great ways they suppress us is suppressing our sense of the possible, and then they operate outside our sense of the possible, and most people dismiss that it could possibly be that they're doing what they're actually doing.
Yeah, and you called this opposames in the past. I mean, we look at Obamni here, and you know what's interesting? I heard this yesterday on the Sean Vanity show. I'm in the car, and I'm just trying to find something to listen to. That's my excuse. I'm sticking to it. That Paul Ryan, this new vice president, who's nothing what he says he is. If you look into him a little bit, you'll find insider trading. He doesn't want to cut the budget. He doesn't cut it. It's all bullshit completely. He's from the district where the Wisconsin shooting was. And then yesterday, police took 40 motorists, handcuffed them, and kept them at gunpoint for 2 hours in Aurora, Colorado, because there was a bank robber running around, and now they're justified to do this. You see, talk about predictive programming and how all this stuff seems to kind of fit together if you just can lift the veil off your eyes and see it with your third eye.
Well, people like Romney and people like Obama and people like Clinton, whoever's your running mate has to be a corrupt criminal insider. Because you're not going to be a corrupt criminal insider like Clinton, Romney, Bush, and Obama, and then have an honest man as your running mate and potential vice president. Ain't going to happen. So it's like people say to me, is the president involved? And I say, well, is he the president? That's the question. Well,
is he?
What about Ryan? What do you think? Has he been chosen by Romney to run with him? Answers itself, because to get to these levels, which are very minor levels within the cabal in general, they're just front people. They're just people to sign the legislation and front up the fraud. But to get to that level, you have to be corrupt and often have serious levels of mind manipulation yourself to get to that level, because they don't want mavericks. They don't want people cuckoos in the nest they can't call. This is why these people that get to these levels are invariably mind manipulated themselves, so that they're predictable and are not going to give any surprises. So this is why anyone who's genuine never gets a chance. But look at Ron Paul. I mean, he said a lot of really good things, but he's got no chance of being president under the cabal system, because that's the last thing that they want people to hear is some of the stuff that he's saying, and so they go for the people we've got. They're all criminals. This is why elections are a complete waste of time.
Well, and there's some evidence to show that even Ron Paul isn't everything that people believe he is, and they want to believe. They just want, and look at Rand Paul, what we've been finding out about him recently, and they just want to believe. They want to follow the leader. It's easier that way, David, and I'm sorry that we don't we just switch paradigms. I want to get rid of all the paradigms. I'm a no paradigm guy. You guys go ahead and go to one camp and the next camp and the next camp. I'm going to go all the way to the end with David Icke here and make a mass jump for higher consciousness. This is what we're going to do. Throughout the show today, we're live, and even when we go off the air, I'll keep David for a little while. You can email me at jackblood@hotmail.com. And if you want to ask David questions, is that okay with you, David, if we do that?
Yeah, that's okay.
All right. And I have a couple coming in, so we're going to get to those before we're done. You guys hit me at jackblood@hotmail.com, and we'll get those questions in front of David, because it's just so rare to get to sit down with him like we do, and I'm so honored that he does it with us. Now, let's go back a little bit. In the last interview, we played a little clip on the Opie and Anthony show. Donald Rumsfeld was on, and the comedian Louis C.K., I think it was, asked him if he's a reptile. And he won't deny it, actually. I want to play that real quick to remind people of what we were talking about, and then I want to play this Muse clip and get your opinion on that. David Icke is with us, davidicke.com. Here is Donald Rumsfeld not denying he's a reptile, flesh-eating reptile.
Almost anybody in the world.
Yeah.
But I still want to know if he's a lizard.
And if he is, stop it.
If he's tasted human flesh.
No, stop.
I just want to know.
Mr. Rumsfeld, again, I want to apologize for Louis C.K. He's a stand-up comedian. He's playing at the Borgata. Go to Borgata.com.
Look, if he's a lizard who has eaten people.
Don't encourage him. It'll just make him worse.
See, and I will stop the
Mr.
second
Rumsfeld.
I get a denial. I'll stop asking.
Tell Louis that my grandchildren are listening.
See?
Well, listen, they have a right to know, too.
No, he's not a lizard, and he's not tasted human flesh.
But you're answering. That's easy for you to say.
I can answer because I know the guy is a great American, a great patriot.
Yes, I totally agree with that.
He's done great things for this country. And
yes, Anthony, is he a lizard? Is Dick Cheney a lizard?
No, they're not. They are people.
Any Mexican babies? Have they eaten any human beings?
Stop it. Stop it. I know. Mr. Rumsfeld, I apologize. Louis C.K. is...
I paid for this microphone, mister.
He's
I want
to
an
be
answer.
Funny.
All right, so, David, what is the operation going on here? To discredit you, to discredit that this could even be a possibility, to, I guess, in a kind of a backhanded way, make fun of you? Or do you, I can't remember what you said last time. You just find it interesting that Rumsfeld could just say, no, that's ridiculous. I'm not a shape-shifting, blood-drinking lizard.
Well, he could have said that, but I mean, you see, when you've had the life that I've had over the last nearly quarter of a century now, of being at one point, ridiculed wherever I went in Britain, walking down any street, any bar, anywhere, what people say about you is irrelevant. I mean, it doesn't even go in one ear and out the other. It just goes over the top and round, really. And they don't have to discredit me by talking about the reptilian thing. All they have to do is talk about the reptilian thing and link it to me, because we're back to the lie and the limit on the sense of possibility. Boing, 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 boing. That cannot possibly encompass the fact that what we see with our 5 sense sight, with invisible light, is only one level of these people. And there are other levels beyond human sight, other levels of frequency,
provable,
where they look very different. Most people aren't going to encompass that. I've been very surprised and delighted, really, at how many people are beginning to say, well, hold on, it sounds crazy, but actually when you put it together with all the other stuff, it does start to make sense. I've been surprised at how many I did. And people have said to me, when you came out with that, didn't you think people would think you were mad? And I'm thinking, do you know I did? Isn't that funny? But what are we going to do? Run away from it? I can't say what I believe is the truth, and I've spent 25 years nearly researching, because they might laugh at me. I couldn't give a damn. I want the truth. You know why I want the truth? Because without it, we are going to end up in a nightmare world, and we're already beginning to see serious elements and serious levels of that coming in. And this is just for starters, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't like what's happening now, if we don't open our minds to actually what is really happening and the depth that it goes, and thus find the way that we turn it around and we change it.
David,
because
hold
we ain't
on.
going to change it around, shouting at the movie screen, saying, change the movie, change the movie. Oh, let's protest. Let's vote for Ron Paul, then everything will be fine. All that stuff. That's shouting at the movie screen, demanding that it changes. It ain't going to. We have to go from where it's coming from, and this is where we have to open our minds and seriously move that sense of possibility, and not accept everything without question, no, but not dismiss it by reflex action without actually giving it a chance. So in terms of the reptilian thing, Jack, all they've got to do is say this is what this guy's saying, and loads of people, the vast majority of people who hear it will go, he must be mad. I couldn't care less.
Well, you sell tens of thousands of books. You sell out your arenas where you do an amazing and very entertaining, by the way, folks, and funny. If you have not seen David Icke live, you don't know what you're missing. It's so entertaining, so funny. Mancow was at the last show that I was at, and I know he loved this. I mean, just because it's entertaining, if nothing else. But here, I'm going to play this Muse clip for you, David, because it's on the same level. But let me just say this, because if people are out there going, oh, this is a bunch of rubbish, what they need to remember is at one time you thought the basic conspiracies that you do believe in now were rubbish and conspiracy and crazy talk. How did you get to this level just to shut down to maybe potentially another level? All possibilities have to be explored if you truly have an open mind and you want to know the truth. That's just the bottom line here. Let me play. This is Matt Bellamy and Muse being interviewed, I think from about a year or so ago. And they talk about the Illuminati and reptilians, and I want to play that for you and kind of get your comments, because you were opening up your show, maybe you still do, with the Muse.
No, not now, no.
With the Muse song.
It changes all the time.
Okay, with the Muse song Uprising, which has very just amazing lyrics, which are seeping into the subconsciousness of Americans as it's being played everywhere, sports stadiums and talk radio and. But I want my listeners to hear this, and I want you to hear it, and let's see what kind of interpretation we get. Here it is.
Like, do you guys run into any problems with people thinking that you are sort of aligning yourself with these people who are fighting the New World Order and stuff?
Well, it's the opposite, actually. We're aligning ourselves with the New World Order, and I've managed to get myself involved into that whole scene. I've done a lot of research into it, and the deeper you go, the darker you go, you actually realise you actually are one of them.
Right.
And because you start to learn the mind control tricks that these people use. You know,
of course,
it's very, very straightforward, actually. And,
so how far into the resistance?
So I've actually used those skills in order to help this band become more popular. So, and in the process of doing that, you end up becoming one of those, and so you end up becoming what you hate.
Right.
But actually, you have a lot more fun. It's less paranoia, and it's a bit more enjoyable lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. And you will eventually rule the world, I suppose. towards the end.
Maybe you've chosen to go on the Ark.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Because aren't they sort of, there's conflicting ideas as to when the world's going to end, or the New World Order is going to finally control the world and stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, it seems to be a lot of research involved in all of this.
Are you taking this seriously?
No.
Yeah, okay.
Although if you are, there's an Ark, please.
I will if you will. Why won't if you won't? Yeah.
Well, let's not talk so much about the Illuminati.
Yeah. All right, so there you are, David. A lot of doublespeak there. Well, what do you make of all of that? I mean, is this just a way to kind of entertain people and be sarcastic and funny? Are they trying to say anything here? Because a couple of my listeners interpret that as a full-on admission that they're working for the other side.
I don't know what they were getting at there, and I don't really care. I mean, we had a classic mainstream media host, and we had a couple of guys who really don't know what the game is. Matt Bellamy did an interview in which he said he was turned onto this stuff by reading Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and he seems to be operating basically at that level, and it goes much deeper than that. Now, there could be many dynamics going on there. He could be not wanting to come out and say, yes, I actually agree with this, for fear of
reprisal,
ridicule and not loss of face with some people, or he might just be at the level of Confessions of an Economic Hitman. But he did say something very true there, that the methods of manipulation have been used to promote Muse. They had to be, because they're used to promote all these major bands and these major entertainment people. And in many ways, it is easier in the short term to just accept it and go with it. But, that's just in the moment. That's just in the now. That's just me. I guess, I don't know what his family background is, Matt Bellamy and the guys from Muse and these other people, but presumably at some point they're going to have children. They haven't already, and they're going to have grandchildren.
Well, he's having children with Kate Hudson, who's ruined a few rock stars in her day and looks a little bit like a monarch model.
Well, you know more about the old rock scene than I do, mate. But what I'm saying is that the children they have now, the children they possibly will have, and the grandchildren they will have, look them in the eye and tell them that it's easier just to go with it and it's more fun, because people. To a large extent, even those that have opened their mind to some of it, it's still a game, it's still an add-on, it's still train spotting or plane spotting, it's still a hobby. But if they really knew the scale, the nature of the world that is designed to be introduced, then if their hair isn't curled, it would curl, and if it is curled, it would uncurl, because they'd go running home crying to their mum if they knew what was really planned. And this is why people like me and you and others have given our lives to try to alert people to, like I said earlier, if you think it's bad now, if you don't like what's happening now, well, strap in, mate, because multiply it by 1,000% and then multiply it some more by the time we get to 2030, 2050. People have no idea, and this is a big thing. One of the greatest ways that this cabal prosper and control is simply the sense of me. Does it affect me? What's in it for me? What are the consequences for me? Well, the consequences for me, if I go with it, is I'll be a big star and I make lots of money and people cheer me and I'll be great. And what's the consequences for me of challenging this stuff? Oh, well, it's not so good. It's not so good. So I'm not going to challenge it, because what's the best thing for me? Going with it. So we have these people in dark suits administering this thing. We have the bureaucrats, we have the people in uniform, we have all of these people. We have these, I tell you, Jack, we have these celebrities, some of which have actually contacted me, and I met one or two, and they've gone, oh, you're doing a great job, thank you very much. So now, what are you going to do with the massive platform, public platform that you have, to communicate this information and make a difference? Answer: silence.
Yeah, I know. I've had the same thing happen.
He's in it for me. Oh, I'm glad you're doing it, Dave. I'm glad you're doing it, Jack. But me, if I did it, well, I'd lose this, I'd lose that, and I wouldn't get a big movie anymore. I would lose me contract and all that stuff. All this business. It's me. Well, that's fine. But one day, I say to these people, me is going to knock on your door. And you're going to realize that reality dawns, and you're going to realize the world that by your silence, when you had the opportunity, you have allowed to unfold for the later years of your life and for most of the life of your kids and all the life of your grandkids.
Yeah, David, look, I was fairly rich and famous. I was running big companies and making a lot of money and doing what I was supposed to do for the most part and playing my part, and it was very nice. I got a lot of perks, and this is what people say, well, Jack, you're just doing this to make money and to be famous. No, I actually already was. I actually gave that up to do this, and it's very similar with you, even on a higher level, head of the Green Party, BBC presenter, sports athlete star in England, all of that. You could have kept going on your path. You'd be living in a giant mansion on the hill right now, reading and repeating the news for people, but instead you did this.
I wouldn't, Jack. I'd have taken the pill by now if that had been my land. I'd have taken the pill and left this reality, I tell you. The thought of continuing in that life, in that world, oh my goodness me, I just shudder. But, I have no problem with people, pursuing their career. I have no problem with people making money and all that, as long as it's legitimate and not screwing people. The problem I have is people who have a platform to make a difference, who say they understand what's going on and they're so glad you're doing what you're doing, who then do nothing to use that platform because they fear the consequences for them. It's all about me, me, me. And, that me is one of the, it's often lost, when people list divide and rule, structures and techniques. They say religion, they say race, they say income bracket and all that stuff, and what have you. But you very rarely hear on the list me, me, me. That is the greatest divide and ruler of all in so many ways, because I'm going to make my decisions not on what is right, not on what is just, not on what needs to be done to turn this world around. I'm going to make my decisions on what's right for me, what benefits me, what makes good consequences for me. And if we go on doing that for much longer, we will me as into them, because we will give the very divide and rule necessary. It's like that great line by the pastor in Nazi Germany. First they came for the Jews, I was not a Jew, so I did nothing. Then they came for the communists, I was not a communist, so I did nothing. Then they came for the trade unionists, I was not a trade unionist, so I did nothing. Then they came for me, and there was no one else left to speak out for me. And this is what's happening. And if we keep looking the other way, then eventually, like I say, me knocks on our door and asks for our papers. And by then, all the other people who together could have changed it, they're all no longer here. And this is why we cannot go on the way we are. Because I think it was Einstein who said, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, is the ultimate confirmation of insanity. So therefore we have to do something differently if we're going to change what we're constantly repeating. And to do that, we need to look in the mirror and say, what do I have to change about me? And the big thing we all have to do is say, what do we have to do to contribute or to stop underpinning this system of human control that's getting more incessant and more extreme by the day? That's the first thing. There's nothing more important in anyone's life than that. Oh, my kids are more important. Okay, so what kind of world are your kids going to live in if you don't make a contribution to this, if you don't stop underpinning it? Everything comes from this. Oh no, my health's more important. They want to destroy your health, and you've seen nothing yet if nothing's done. Oh, my bank account's more important. Oh, really? Well, what about when they crash the banking system and whatever you've got in the bank is worthless? Which it is now, except we take it seriously. Everything, people, comes down to sorting this out. It is the number one priority on planet Earth.
Well, David, I am not going to be told how to behave by people that put nooses around their necks and get on the train every morning to be a slave for somebody to earn credits of which they don't own anything. These people put nooses around their necks. Let's just stop and think about that for a minute, David. They call them ties. They're really nooses. I mean, what are they telling us? I'm not listening to these people. They're not telling me how to run my life or live my life, and I don't care.
Well, because one of the rituals when you join the Freemasons, I think it's in the bottom 3 degrees, is you have a noose around your neck.
Coincidentally enough.
You're right. That's the necktie. I mean, that's what it is. It's an upside down noose.
But they don't even see it. These people put a noose around their neck every day because they have to, or they don't fit in, and they can't get paid, and they can't earn their credits to get their big screen TV that they don't own. They don't even notice it's a noose.
But you see, this is interesting because we come back to what we were talking about earlier. A symbol is an information field, and the information field is created by the intent behind the symbol. So if you put a symbol up, for instance, of the Statue of Liberty, you might tell people that it's about liberty, but actually, as can be well documented, the Statue of Liberty is an image of the ancient goddess of Babylon, and was given to New York by French Freemasons in Paris, and there's a mirror image of the Statue of Liberty on an island in the River Seine in Paris. So you look at the Statue of Liberty, and you might think it's liberty, but by making that energetic connection, you are connecting with something that represents this cabal. And therefore that cabal is again trawling your energy. So if you've got a tie around your neck which represents a noose, then that is the energy around you, in your energy field, around your neck, that will be resonating to, and it will be influencing you. The more you have a noose around your neck, which on an energetic level is an electromagnetic information field representing the fact that you're a slave, the more it will impact upon your subconscious sense of self that you are just there to serve and not to reason why, just to take orders, just to do what the boss tells you to do. Yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir, anything you say sir. This is what these symbols, in this case the tie, is actually doing to us. It's all happening, Jack, on this deeper.
But David, that guy over there, he has a blue tie on. I have a red noose. He has a blue noose. He's the enemy.
Exactly that. And this whole thing about symbols, over the years I've studied the symbols, but I've got really deeply into it in the last little while, because the more that the years have passed, and the more that I've understood through more and more research and experience, the more profound and the more of absolutely the foundation of this control is actually the symbols, because the symbols are a language. I'm speaking now, and what's happening is my vocal cords are resonating a information vibrational field. That's what it is. When my words are passing between me and other people, as they pass between me and someone else, they are not words. They are a vibrational information field. They are silent. And then what happens is the ear of the receivers picks up that resonance field and decodes it into electrical information, which is communicated to the brain, which decodes it into the words they think they're hearing. So that is the vocal language that people accept is the way people communicate. But what is it? It's a vibrational information field carrying the thoughts and expressions that someone has said. The language of symbols is simply another form of information field, which it invariably talks not to the ears, of course, but talks to the eyes. And the eyes decode subconsciously, or that acuity decodes the information in the symbol, and we get influenced by it. They're not putting these symbols, Jack, all over the place. They're not filling entertainment and Madonna Super Bowl halftime shows and Lady Gaga shows and titles of television shows and all this stuff. They're not doing that for a bit of fun. They know that they're communicating subconsciously to us through the language of symbols, and that's why the language of symbols goes throughout the ancient.
What do they say? We own you, as George Carlin said. By the way, we have booked George Carlin's wonderful daughter on the show for next week, and I think that should be pretty fun. He's just an amazing guy who cut through a lot of this, tried to tell people what was going on a much higher level, like Bill Hicks. In fact, you have commented recently about using humor to communicate, and then we get a lot of people. They're very serious, they're very angry, and of course the people that listen to these people also get too serious and too angry. They're not able to communicate to their friends, their neighbors, their coworkers, because that anger, it looks like they're reptilians, and it is kind of a way the reptilian response to some of this. But it's great to use humor as we communicate the bigger messages.
Yeah, Jack, we're back to the same theme. What they want to do with this electromagnetic field, some people call it the Earth's energy field, doesn't matter. I mean, the energy sea in which we constantly live our lives in this reality, they want to lower its vibrational state because they want to lower its informational state. They do not want it enlightened. They want it stupid. They want it lower vibrational. Because if you, it's a simple question. How do you affect all the fish at the same time? You affect the sea they swim in. Got 'em. So if you want to get to all of humanity, then you target the energy sea in which we're living our lives all the time. And so, and not only that, as I've been writing about for so many years, these entities behind this, that are behind the bloodlines that we see in human form, they feed off human energy. They're trawling human energy. They're energy vampires. And when they trawl our energy, what else are they trawling? They're trawling our creativity. They're trawling our potential, which they can then use, because they lack those things for reasons I explain in my new book, Wembley, and then they recycle our own creativity back upon us in a different form to creatively control us. And so they want us in a low vibrational state, because not least because that's the only energy they can absorb. They can't absorb the energy of love and joy and laughter. They want the energy of low vibrational, low emotional states. And thus, which comes round to the whole humor thing you're talking about, if we respond to what they're doing, for instance, economically, by going out in angry protests and throwing fire bombs and petrol bombs, as happened in some places in Europe and all that stuff, what are we doing? We are feeding the energy field with exactly the energetic, emotional energy that they want to fill the field with. So, we need to break that cycle. You don't have to get...
Well, Huxley was right. You got to beg for this. You've got to ask. You've got to let the vampire in the door. You've got to invite them in. They want you, and this is kind of what Occupy and all this stuff gets into. Please tax us more. Please put on more handcuffs and more regulations so that we have social justice for everybody. And they get us to really beg for our own slavery, because they cannot punish human consciousness into doing what they want to do. It won't work. It has to be Pavlovian. It has to be, risk and reward. It has to be... please beg for it. Get out and beg for it, and that's what I see we're doing. Wembley Arena is where David Icke will be. Remember who you are. The 9-hour... it's not a lecture, folks. This is a show like you have never seen before. I wish I could be there, David. October 27th, 2012. Maybe tickets are still available. Tell everyone. Let's have a mass movement, because it is a global awakening. They once thought David was crazy. Well, now they're coming in their thousands all over the world to see him. I've seen him a few times. It's life-changing. David Icke, remember who you are? Wembley Arena. I wanted to promote that, David, because we're going to go off live here in about 5 or 6 minutes, and then I'm going to keep you, and we're going to answer some of these emails, if you would. DavidIcke.com to find out all things David Icke, including headlines. Thank you, David, for linking to us occasionally. Remember Who You Are is the latest book, and I happen to know there's a new book, as always, you're working on right now as we speak, that will be coming out. The Lion Sleeps No More, the last one, just amazing, full of 5 senses information and then higher consciousness information. So it's something for everybody. David, anything else you need to get out or plug or anything before we lose the live audience?
No, it's just that, I want Wembley to be a massive focus. We've got lots of ideas which we're going to see if they work out to make it even bigger and more worldwide. We're going to see what is possible. But it's basically what I'm looking to do here is what I've just described that the Illuminati families do, only in reverse. Because the energy field that we live in is not good or bad. It's an energy field. And it's like a microphone or a notebook or a television camera. They're not negative or positive in and of themselves. It's the way they're used. It's what you do with them. And so if we can get in a lot of people there, many as we can, and some other things that we're talking about as possibilities, we can get this focus. Energy flows where attention goes. And, it's no myth that the Earth is interpenetrated by force lines, which become known as ley lines or meridian lines, dragon lines, they call them in the
33rd parallel, yeah.
These are energy lines of force, and where one or two of them cross, it throws up a vortex. Where lots of them cross, it throws up a vortex which is of global importance in terms of what happens in that vortex affects the entire human energy field, the Earth energy field. Well, one of those major vortexes, which is why we've had the London Olympics at this time, and why London, like Rome, is such a massive center for this global manipulation, is in the city of London. And they have been working that energy field and therefore impacting upon the global energy field all the way through this summer. And what we want to do at Wembley is reverse that, because as an organization in America, the Heart Math Institute, which measures the power and the nature of the electromagnetic energy that is projected by the heart in different states of being. And they say that, the energy of what we call love and appreciation and all these things is thousands and thousands of times more powerful in its impact than low vibrational emotion. You need far more of that to impact upon a situation than you do of love and happiness and joy. And this is why humor, right, is so important, because you can't be frightened and laugh at the same time. And these people are so pathetic, so ridiculous, so utterly insane that you can't take them seriously. You have to take what they do seriously and address it, yes, but they are pathetic. Hillary Clinton is something to be frightened of. Henry Kissinger, David Rockefeller, the Rothschilds, there's something to be frightened of. They're pathetic. Yeah. They're boys and girls in short pants, and they only have their power because they take human power in the ways that I'm describing.
That's right. Ridiculing them does take their power away, and I know people don't like it. They think it's not nice, it's not professional, and all of this. I've learned that on a pretty high level. Even when there are entities that could come into you, you need to, in your own mind, put them in a tutu and ridicule them. Hey, we got to save the rest of this, David, because now I have to go to No Agenda show, cuts in right now with the great Adam Curry and John C. Dvorak. They just do an amazing show. That's going to come on live. It'll be backstage, and then they'll come up in about 15 minutes, and you'll listen to them on No Agenda, on the No Agenda stream. We'll continue, David, on a few other streams, and we'll also archive this for our listeners. We'll keep you for 15, 20 more minutes. I did want to read some emails, so even if you'll stay a little later, just a tiny bit longer, I want to get all the email questions to you, and we'll try to get through as many of those as we can. David Icke, davidicke.com, playing at Wembley Arena in October. Also, his books are excellent. Please, open your mind and be a part of this. That's the main thing. His videos are all free. You can see them on YouTube and on davidicke.com. All right, David, we'll take a quick break here, about 4 minutes. We'll come back more with the one and only David Icke, and I'm Jack Blood. This is the Jack Blood Show. Thanks for staying with us backstage, my friend.
It's a pleasure, and it is very encouraging, to see so many people now that are opening their minds, not just to the fact that there's a conspiracy going on, but actually opening their minds to the depth and nature of it, because it gives us a chance to do something about it.
Well, the only thing we didn't talk about on my list, and now we can kind of let our hair down and let the F-bombs go and, whatever the SPLC doesn't want us to talk about. Can you believe they had a shooting at the Family Research Council, who the SPLC says is a hate group, and it looks to me like they sicked this guy on this group, man. They are the biggest hate mongers ever, and they put me and you on their lists, saying we hate when all we preach and all we talk about is love. It's upside down. But the only thing we didn't talk about was the Mars landing. I'd like to get your take on that.
Yeah, I think that all these things that NASA do are actually connected to something greater, or most of it anyway. And someone who did a documentary on the moon and the nature of artifacts on the moon talked to a NASA insider who said we lied about everything. And I think we have to keep that in mind when they are producing these probes and these missions. What they actually tell us they're about and what they tell us they've found is not going to be the truth unless the truth will not affect our perception of reality. I've written extensively about the moon. I don't believe, and even more so as I understand more, I don't believe that the moon is a natural body, or at least at the very least it's a construct from a body that maybe is natural but has been, if you like, converted. And one of the things we talked about during the show was this idea of suppression of people's perception of the possible. And we are going to have to wide open our minds, crash open our minds so wide if we're going to start to understand the nature of the human plight. For instance, the idea that something that is 2,160 miles in diameter, the moon, could be a construct is beyond the comprehension, the sense of possibility of most people, because it's just, we can't build that. Yeah, no, we can't build that, but that does not mean that it cannot be built if you understand the nature of reality. And, one of the things that I've been focusing on in the last few years, and I'm a big time at this moment, is the nature of Saturn and what Saturn is. It's very clear that at one point Saturn did not have rings, but was actually, I say Saturn is a dwarf sun, a dwarf star. I said Jupiter's the same. The Saturn gives off 2.5 times more energy than it receives from the sun. It is a form of star, not a planet as we perceive it. And the rings are artificial, I suggest. There's a man called Norman Bergrun who has a long history in aeronautics and space research and science and that whole arena. He's in his 90s now, but he wrote a book some years ago, back in the 80s, I think it was, called The Ringmakers of Saturn, because he observed from the pictures sent back by the Voyager missions, Voyager 1 and 2 to Saturn, also to Jupiter, but to Saturn then, that there were gigantic electromagnetic phenomena in the rings of Saturn that were actually creating them. This all fits with what I say Saturn is, which is a gigantic broadcasting system, which is broadcasting this fake reality in league with the moon, which is like something that picks that up and amplifies it at the Earth, so we get it big time strong. And this is the way that at least part of this matrix is formed.
Haven't you written in the past, though, that, and let me go back to Mars for a second, David, and all this stuff is in your books, and it's very intriguing, very interesting about the moon and certainly Saturn, and again, it's like the reptilian thing. We see the demagoguery of it. We see it used everywhere, and they worship it, so we should be suspicious. Talk about suspicious minds. You had written in a few of your books talking about Mars having been the original colony, that Mars was destroyed or burned out, and then the people had moved here, and then in fact a lot of the Aryan race, Aryan worship comes from something like Mars. Are you still in that mind?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I was going to go on, but you've taken me there, which is great, about Mars, because there's an excellent book written quite a long time ago now by a man called David Tolbert, who seems to be an excellent researcher, and he's involved in this whole area of the electric universe, which is fundamentally important to understanding how the universe works. And he wrote a book years ago called The Saturn Myth. And the Saturn Myth was the result of what seems like decades of research into ancient legends, accounts, symbols relating to Saturn. And it's fascinating. I mean, you mentioned about, things being all around us, so we should look at them. Well, Saturn is all around us in the most extraordinary way in terms of symbols. There's Saturn symbolism everywhere. Courts are Saturn symbols. The black gowns of judges and when you get your degree in education, that is Saturn. The cube is Saturn. This is why they have the black cube in Mecca, which is the focus of worship of the Islamic religion. It's everywhere, and I go into it in the book. So I'm really going to go into this at Wembley in big time as well, and I'm going further on all the time as I understand more. And it's one of the big pennies that dropped with me that brought this kaleidoscope into much greater focus, Jack, was when I realized that actually Saturn was once the prime sun of the Earth. It was in a very different position to the one where it is now, and it didn't have rings. And there was this phenomenal cataclysm, which people like Emanuel Velikovsky wrote about in the 50s to great ridicule, of course, but people like David Tolbert and the Electric Universe fraternity now that have got this whole area of science, which is very, very credible. They are supporting this whole basic theme, not every detail, but the theme of Velikovsky's work, which was that there was this fantastic cataclysm, which links to the Great Flood and all the ancient accounts of the earth tipping over and mountains soaring out of the earth and all this stuff in the ancient past. And the way that the solar system was rearranged. And Tolbert's reading of this from the ancient accounts is that there was a catastrophic interaction during this cataclysmic event between the Earth and Mars, and enormous electromagnetic bolts were exchanged between the two. And Mars, which was nothing like, well, I say it is now, is nothing like we're told it is now, before this cataclysmic event or events, it seems to be more than one, which for me, Mars was not the desolate planet that we're told it is now. That long ago. People talk about, science talks about, millions and millions of years ago, this happened. No, much, much, much closer than that. Because, you can bash something over a period of time, or you can set it on fire and destroy it in a minute. And something massively cataclysmic hit or affected Mars, which changed its nature very, very quickly. And the solar system we see today is nothing like the solar system that the ancients describe. And Mars is, what do they call it? What do they call Mars? They call the planet of war. And one expression of this is that there was this symbolic war in the heavens that the ancients talked about. And Saturn ceased to be the sun, because it was a two-sun system then. We had the sun that we know now, and we had the sun that we call Saturn, that was much closer to the Earth than our sun, and thus was the prime sun from Earth's perspective. And then it went walkabout. Venus went walkabout. So did Mars. So did Jupiter in this great cataclysmic event. And interestingly, the observations of Norman Bergrun, looking at the images that came back from the Voyager missions to Saturn, and which have been supported by the later Cassini mission to Saturn in its images, is that there are these enormous electromagnetic phenomena. He calls them vehicles, which are spewing out. He calls it exhaust. I say it's something very different. That are actually creating the rings. And the official story is that the rings of Saturn are full of ice, basically, ice particles of various sizes. I say that is actually some form of crystal, maybe that we don't know about on Earth and have never come across. But those rings are a receiver transmission system.
It looks like a giant antenna. Hello?
Yes, exactly. And one of the things that the Cassini mission found is that there are enormously powerful radio emissions, coming from Saturn. And there is, at one pole of Saturn, a continuous hexagram storm twirling. At the other pole, there is a storm that looks just like an eye, a continuous storm. And they found that this hexagon storm, hexagon storm, is moving in relation to the radio signal emissions. And you can go on the internet and put in sounds from Saturn in a search engine, and you can hear some of these really horrible sounds that are being recorded coming out of Saturn. And what I'm saying here is that sound represents the information matrix that the human genetic manipulation recorded by all these ancient cultures has been tuned in to pick up and decode into reality. And what reality how our reality would be different if we weren't decoding that, what I call the hack, into our reality, into our sense of reality. I don't know, but I think it is substantial. And that if that was not broadcasting and we weren't receiving and transmitting in it through manipulated DNA, then I think the world that we would be experiencing through the conscious mind would be very different to the one we are now. Exactly in line with the Matrix movies.
Let's really freak people out, because one of the top experts in planetary life was asked about why go to Mars. And he said, I wouldn't even waste my time going to Mars. He said, I would go to Euclideus, Saturn's moon, or Titan. He mentioned Euclideus, and he said that has the closest possibility of Earth atmosphere holding life. It's like a little Earth, allegedly. So here we have not only Titan, but possibly Euclideus that could have life.
Yes, I think very different life to us, because, what I'm going into now is that, behind this reptilian element and behind possibly all this so-called extraterrestrial interaction, I prefer to call them interdimensionals, is a force which doesn't take form. It is like an electromagnetic form which can take any form, and it works through these other groups. And what I found fascinating was to read in some detail in the last few months the content of a find in Egypt in 1945 of a sealed jar of writings from a group that had become known as the Gnostics. The Gnostics were the people behind the great library of Alexandria, which was sacked and burned and destroyed by the Roman Church. They were basically the mentality behind the Cathars in southern France that were destroyed by the authorities and the Roman Church. Their last stand was at a castle called Montségur in, I think it was 1244, something like that. And what you see as a common theme is these Gnostic thinkers, these that have this Gnostic view of the reality in the universe, end up being slaughtered, and their information, if not being destroyed, then being taken out of public circulation. I think you'll find a lot of it in the vaults of the Vatican, personally. And it's interesting what these Gnostic writings talk about. About a fifth of the writings in these sealed container discovered in Egypt, which seems to go back to around 400 AD, which was in the period when the Great Library of Alexandria in Egypt was destroyed. About a fifth of the writings refer to a group of entities that they call the archons. And they talk about something called the demiurge, which is their version of what Christians would call the devil or Satan. And the archons were basically what Christians would call the demons, what Islamic Muslim people would call the jinn, and what others would call fallen angels, all this stuff. And it talks about how this physical world is the realm of the archons and the demiurge. It talks about the fact that they do not have what has been decoded or translated as intentionality, which I would describe, I think, more simply as creative imagination. They don't have it. And they therefore have to parasite off those who have and tap into their creative imagination and get them to create for them. Are we describing what we've been talking about in the show today?
Yeah.
And how that they cannot, if they had a blank sheet of paper, they could not create anything upon it. But give them a sheet of paper full of something and they could twist it, manipulate it, and edit it and censor it, but they could not actually start it from scratch because they don't have that creative imagination. And it talks about how the fact that they parasite off humanity by accessing the human mind. And on it goes. I'll go into this more at Wembley, but what I was reading was what I've uncovered in my own way and in my own language all the way through these years. I mean, it just dovetailed so perfectly. And I do feel that they are describing something that's absolutely based on fact. And when you look at it, Jack, look at our society. At every level, it is levels and different groups parasiting off other people and other groups, all the way down. I mean, what greater expression of the parasital mind could you have than the human banking system? It mirrors the parasital nature of these archon entities. Everything. I mean, what is it doing? And in fact, what banking is doing, because everything is energy, it is trawling and vampiring our energy. What is money? It's energy. You put it in your pocket, you put it in your bank account, that energy becomes attached to you while it's in your ownership and therefore in your energy field. It picks up your energy. It then moves on to someone else. It picks up their energy. And when it eventually comes back to source, those who've put the money out there, all these networks around the Rothschilds, then they are trawling not only energy back plus interest. What is the interest, Jack? You know, in the holographic world, it's more money on top of principal. But the interest at the energetic level is human energy on top of the energy of money that was put out there in the first place.
But that is your life source. People forget this. This is why we say it's so important if you want change in the world to use that life force, if it's converted to money or whatever buying power, consumer power you have, and vote with that. Forget the voting at the electronic voting booth. Put your energy into things that are ethical, that you support, that expand consciousness and freedom throughout the universe, and you'll see a different situation, David. That is the answer. That can happen. That's our life force. Is we go to work every day. We work, or we toil the land and create food, and that creates a commodity that can then be traded or sold. But if we're giving all our money, whether it's wittingly or unwittingly, to Goldman Sachs, or to J.P. Morgan or to Chase Manhattan or Citibank or whatever Rothschild front company it is, we're going to keep getting the same thing over and over. Are you ready to answer some questions?
Yeah, these people are parasites, and if I can find it, I just want to give you a quick quote on this situation that we're currently discussing. Let me find it because it's important to give a feel on the fact that they know that what I've just said about money is true. There was a document, I'm sure you've heard of it, no doubt, that came to light years ago called Quiet Weapons for Quiet Wars, and it described in some detail how mass social engineering and mass mind control goes on. And one of the things it talked about at some length was how money is used in to this end, and this is what it said about money in the context of what we've just talked about. Economics is only a social extension of a natural energy system. Since energy is the key to all activity on the face of the earth, it follows that in order to attain a monopoly of energy, raw materials, goods and services, everything you've just mentioned, and to establish a world system of slave labor, it is necessary to have a first strike capability in the field of economics. In order to maintain our position, it is necessary that we have absolute first knowledge of the science of control over all economic factors and the first experience of at engineering the world economy. In order to achieve such sovereignty, you must at least achieve this one end, that the public will not make either the logical or mathematical connection between economics and the other energy sciences, or learn to imply such knowledge. To make a short story of it all, it was discovered that an economy obeyed the same laws as electricity, and that all of the mathematical theory and practical and computer knowledge developed for the electronic field could be directly applied to the study of economics. This discovery was not openly declared, you surprise me, and its more subtle implications were and are kept a closely guarded secret. For example, that in an economic model, wait for this, my goodness me, for example, that in an economic model, human life is measured in dollars, and that the electric spark generated when opening a switch connected to an active inductor is mathematically analogous to the initiation of war. It's all happening, Jack, in the electromagnetic field.
And this is why they need me to wear my seatbelt, because they don't see me as a human life. They see me of units of energy translated into fractional reserve lending. I'm not a person anymore, David. I'm a credit rating. I found this out looking for a flat the last 3 or 4 months, and realized that my financials weren't in good order because I live in the underground economy, and it's really changed just in the last 2 years. I'm on a no rent list. I find I'm on a no food list. I'm on a no this list, a no that list, and they want to figure out exactly what I'm worth as a human to see if I can even get on a plane and fly at an airport. So we've really lost our way, and people like David, I think, really a big cold bucket of ice water sometimes. I want to get to some questions because I don't want to keep it too much longer, and there's 10 questions, so the quicker you answer them, the quicker I get you out of here, and I want to make sure everybody got input. All right, David?
Okay.
David Icke with us, davidicke.com, our good friend. I recently watched, this is by the way from Jim, I recently watched David's video at Oxford Union. At the end, he explained how he likens reality to a radio frequency. He spoke about that earlier. He told a story of a hypnotist that made a man unable to see his daughter standing right in front of him. His question is that if this is true, are we all on the same frequency? Because how do we all see the same reality, i.e. people and events? And if you raise your consciousness, do you still see this reality as well as an extension of it?
Well, this collective reality is a collective information field. So we will look out of the window and we'll see the same car passing in the street. But what we think about it and what we make of it and how we react to it and respond to it will be different. That's where we put our unique spin on things. So we're in this reality. We are, in terms of the conscious mind, tuned in to this frequency. Thus, we all pick up the same collective reality. But that's only the starting point, because, in the same way that I described how this guy was hypnotized so he couldn't see his daughter standing in front of him, his daughter in her prime state is an energetic field. She's not the hologram that we see. That is created when the five senses take energetic information, the prime state of this reality, and turn it into electrical information, which is communicated to the brain, which then decodes that information into a holographic digital reality. If you don't go through that process of decoding that energetic field through into the holographic through the brain, you will not in your conscious world see that energy field. So all the hypnotist did was to implant a blocking frequency, a blocking code, through the hypnotic nature of the way he worked the guy, to stop that man's brain decoding the energy field of his daughter, which is outside of the realm of the conscious mind. Thus, she was not decoded through into the holographic realm of the conscious mind. Thus, everyone in the room who was doing that could see her. He could not see her, even though she was in front of him. Why? Because she wasn't decoded through by him into the realm of the conscious mind. Now, this opens up a great Pandora's box of how you can individually and collectively do what our hypnotist did. Through various and infinite numbers of increasing numbers of techniques, to stop people individually and collectively decoding reality at the energetic level and bringing it through into the holographic level. So what is going on in the electromagnetic field, in the energetic level of this reality, which if we weren't manipulated, we would be experiencing through the conscious mind, that currently we're not. You see, once you've got this situation where if they can block the decoding mechanism, you can keep something out of human reality, five sense reality, then where's the limit? The sky's the limit, and this is happening all the time. And a lot of this manipulation through symbolism is doing that. It's putting blocking frequencies in, so we're not pulling everything into holographic reality that we could be experiencing. And when you start to expand your mind, you might not initially be able to see things that you couldn't before visually, but you can. I mean, how many people have been through this? You can then start to see things in terms of your perception of seeing the world in a completely different way. Oh, I couldn't see that was going on before, but now it's pretty obvious to me. Why? Because you have expanded the realm of, or the range that you are perceiving the world in, and thus you're now starting to look into the world from outside of this matrix and see things within it you couldn't see before.
Yeah, so to kind of make that a little simpler, and that's a great answer to the question, very thorough, but we aren't all going to be on the same frequencies in a sense when we're able to expand our frequencies and experience other frequencies, but in a greater macro sense, we are all one, as you constantly say. So that is something I hope we strive for. Let me go to the
Jack,
go ahead.
Think very quickly. We're not on the same frequency. In terms of our perception, we might be on the same frequency because, you see, the body computer that locks us into this reality, it is resonating within the frequency of this reality. So if it wasn't, we couldn't interact with it. I couldn't hold this pen I'm holding at the moment because my consciousness and the trinkets of this so-called physical world would be so different in terms of frequency that it was like two radio stations. They'd pass each other, they wouldn't connect. So we take on the outer shell that is resonating within the frequency we want to interact with, and thus we can, pick up a cup of tea and we can interact with this reality. So we're all locked in at one level to that. This is why, to answer the question, we all actually experience the same world in its basic landscape. But there are people listening to this show and the previous part of the show who will have listened to what I've said and gone, no, that makes sense. That makes sense to me. There will be others that might have caught it and gone, that guy is a complete lunatic. Now, are those two people on the same wavelength? Are you kidding? But they are locked into the same frequency band in terms of their conscious mind, but how the point from which they're perceiving that is absolutely not on the same frequency. Absolutely not.
Well, they need the They Live sunglasses. You know, we often talk about perception being reality, and people get mad at me too, David, and I use the example of that 33-story owl building in Austin, Texas. And a lot of people look at it, they just see an Art Deco building. A lot of other people look at it and they go, that's a giant 33-story owl. So, you know, it is what it is. I love it when you say that. Let's go to another question. Ed has written and said, could you ask David if the digital switchover we're having in the UK could have anything to do with screwing with people's minds since the analog ban will be freed up or something like that? Let me just quickly say that I do know as a fact that the digital television, the digital digital signals can all be databased and tracked where the analog ones can't. So if whatever you're watching, they know whatever it is, it's all cataloged and databased to maybe be used against you as a later date as a character circumstantial case in a murder trial, whatever it is. They can keep track of it if it's digital. Analog, not so easy, but there's something higher to the question to this, I think, David, and you know what he's talking about.
Yeah, the answer is a very loud yes. You know, there are red flags that you get used to when you see them repeating. And one of them is when they are pushing something through with ridiculous speed and causing great disruption for no reason of speed necessary. Once you see that, it's the agenda. I mean, we've got a situation now in this country where they're not only, you know, wanting to switch or are switching to digital television, they want digital radio. So people are going to have to change all their car radios and stuff like that at great cost because they want us tuned to the digital reality. We have, as I was saying, we have the energetic waveform level of this universe. That's the prime information field from which everything else comes. We have the electrical level, which is interesting. We decode from the waveform through the electrical, which the brain decodes, and now you've got this whole area of the electric universe and how they say the universe is electrical. I say one level of it is electrical, the one that they're looking at, because the collective and the individual have got to be the same. And then there is also the digital and holographic. You know, when some people have had strokes or some people have gone into other states of consciousness, they have stopped decoding a reality through into the holographic, and they've gone back one stage into the digital, and they've described reality as looking like pixels. They've used that word, yes, because that's the digital level. So by getting us focused, again, energy flows where attention goes, but what do we do that more than with a television? Well, most people anyway. They are locking us in to a level of reality that is even closer to the conscious mind five senses of the holographic realm than the analog frequency level. So they're trying to lock us in even more to that myopia and squeeze that myopia even more. And of course, when we're watching digital television, it's speaking to the digital level of us and the digital level of reality. And that's why they're doing it.
There's something else to this, too. I mean, again, the shorter answers you give me, because I got about 15 questions at least here, a lot sooner I'll get you out. But I want to add this. You know, analog travels throughout the universe, David. Digital is locked into its own matrix here on Earth, and we'll go quiet. All of a sudden, we're going to be really loud. People don't understand this. In fact, the movie Contact exercises this brilliantly, where the radio wave will just travel and travel and travel and travel and travel to other planets and to other galaxies. It'll just keep going. What we did on the radio, you and I, a few years ago on the big radio stations, is still out there. It's going intact. But what digital does is it quiets the planet. They're not going to hear us somewhere else as we get rid of this analog. Does that have anything to do with this?
Well, I'm sure it does. You know, they do not go to these levels for no reason. Everything has a reason. These people wake up every day, and their obsession is advancing this whole agenda for human control. It consumes their entire being. So therefore, everything they do is related to that. And so they're not going to do what they're doing with digital television in Britain, America, and around the world unless there's something major to it. Interestingly, another aspect of this is, I think you mentioned it a few minutes ago, is freeing bandwidths. I think the question did. Freeing bandwidths for other things. And I came across a quote from the New Scientist, which is a right center of the mainstream science magazine in Britain. And it was talking about what happened immediately after after America went digital. And it said this: prior to the switchover, naturally occurring radio waves at frequencies between 700 and 800 megahertz were obscured by analog TV signals, preventing astronomers from investigating the universe using this band. Freeing up this bandwidth is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see galaxies in this range. So we have a situation, we're talking about blocking reality and changing reality, where astronomers, i.e. anybody, couldn't see whole galaxies within that 700, 800 megahertz frequency band because Americans were watching the television. And they say it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to see galaxies in this range because they're only going to be available for a short time because they're going to fill those old TV analog frequency bands with other technology. What is that other technology? It could well, at least in part, be connected to global microchipping and all that stuff.
Right.
But people, they need to understand that mind control, mind manipulation, and blocking whole areas of the universe from our sight when it's there to be seen is child's play with the technology these people have in the secret projects, and which I would strongly suggest they're getting from non-earthly sources.
Well, I mean, freeing up frequencies for something like Trapwire to watch us all on this new Microsoft system that integrates all cameras, private and public, and they're building that in New York, as we know. Let's move on. David, if you need to go to the loo or get a drink of water, please let us know, and we'll give you a chance to do that.
I'm just saying, I've got great respect for Bill Gates. He gave us Microsoft. He's funding GM crops in places like Africa. He's pushing the climate change agenda. He's
vaccinations, chemtrails,
geoengineering, and I was going to say vaccinations and all that stuff around the world. He's a lovely man, apparently. Very good to his mother. Never goes home.
Yeah, I think in England you just call that guy a cunt, and I'm not supposed to say it. That's one of the 7 words you can't say now, David. So I just did. Whatever. It's different. It means something different in England, just like fag means something different in England. It's a cigarette, right? Here's Zandor Bletzman. He's a great contributor, a great writer, a great thinker, and he contributes to DeadlineLive.info, our website, quite a bit. He says, I love David Icke. He's helped me open my mind quite a bit. I'm currently working on an op-ed piece where I'm giving my opinion on why peaceful groups like Falun Gong practitioners are so often attacked throughout history by those in power. Can you ask David his opinion on this subject and whether he believes that peaceful people in general won't fall into the holographic trap, or is meditation necessary to make this happen?
Well, anything that takes you out of domination of the 5 senses is to be desired, because the 5 senses are the stadium of the matrix. And this is why the whole of society is basically structured to entice and to entrap the 5 senses. The Falun Gong situation is very interesting. When I spoke in Hawaii, which has a lot of big New Age community, and it can be a massive form of escapism, all that stuff. I mean, when I see newspapers describe me as a New Age guru, I don't know whether to laugh or cry, really. I mean, so I talked about this in a way because I was trying to get something across. The idea that if you ignore the world as it's unfolding and you think, I'll just go into meditation and organic food and I'll grow my own food and I'll just escape from the world. Well, you're kidding yourself, because the world's coming towards you by the day, It wants an end to organic food. It wants an end to you doing meditation. It wants an end to alternative methods of healing and alternative methods of nutrition. And therefore, you can put your head in the sand, but the tornado is still coming. And we need to get together, and we need to put down our beliefs, whatever they are, New Age, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, whatever, and realize that the target is all of us, and all this other stuff is to divide and rule the target so that the target can be vanquished. And I used the example of Falun Gong when I was talking about this in Hawaii, because there are people who are basically doing many of the things that we would call New Age. And they were, and have been, and continue to be vicious, grotesquely targeted by the Chinese regime. And if people say, well, what's the world going to be like, if the takeover comes? I say, well, look at China. That's almost a blueprint. This idea of,
they say as much.
Yeah, the conflict between America and China. It's all for public consumption. At the top, they're answering to the same agenda and the same force. And in so many ways, China has been allowed to get on with unfolding this agenda quicker than anybody. So look at China. That's the world, and then some that they want to be. And it's not a coincidence that they should target the Falun Gong people who got up to, I think it was something like 70 million people in the end, and to such an extent that 70 million people doing that have an impact on the electromagnetic field. Here we go again, and they don't want that. So they target them, and they do grotesque things to them, and they seek to break their influence, yes, but also to break the energy of harmony that they are projecting into the energetic field. And this is what they will seek to do all over the world. See, at any point, they can only pick off what they can get away with. And so they keep pushing the gate, and they keep pushing the gate. And if there's no resistance the other side, well, they walk through it, and then they push the next gate. This is why, we've got to mix my metaphors, we've got to draw a line in the bloody sand, or a gate in the bloody sand, pretty damn bloody quickly. Because as we cease to resist, then they just push on. And there'll come a point, if we allow this to continue, where they'll feel confident enough. They feel confident enough now to go for the alternative nutrition and organics and small farmers and growers. And there'll come a point where they'll feel confident enough in the Western world to go for what is now the New Age alternatives and stuff like that. So, I say to those people, get your head out the bloody sand and start facing this. Because if you don't, then you're going to get a knock on your door and be asked for your papers. And your neighbors.
And there'll be no one left to.
They sit and meditate at night. Bang, bang.
You know what, David, what's interesting is the Falun Gong are really the Sikhs of China. And the Sikhs are now just attacked in Wisconsin. The peace-loving, truth-loving people. And by the way, one of the people in those temple had a connection to Stephen Greer and the Disclosure Project. But they were set up by Indira Gandhi, who has no relation to the Mahatma Gandhi. I don't know if people know that. Set up because her bodyguards were Sikhs that allegedly assassinated her for doing what? For oppressing the Sikhs. The Sikhs are oppressed by everybody, by the Muslims, the Christians, just everybody. So in a way, they're almost comparable to Falun Gong in China. And look what's happened to them. It's the same thing. And now they've just been slaughtered in Wisconsin by a psychological operations army guy.
Yeah, and what that does, it takes away people's sense of harmony, because much as they may try, it will affect Sikhs all over America thinking, well, is it going to be me next, or they're in their temple, and that's going to be in their mind. This is all the psychological thing that goes on, and part of this is to take people who are exposed in the conspiracy, or actually coming from a point of love each other, care for each other, come together. And they target them as hate mongers, because it's another interesting thing, Jack, is that one of the things that the Gnostic writings said about the archons is that they invert everything. Everything's inverted. And if you look at this world, everything's inverted. Universities destroy knowledge, governments destroy freedom, doctors destroy health. Everything's inverted. And so someone who's talking about coming together and loving each other and we're all one, it becomes a hate monger.
Exactly. Well, and that's how. And then they also stop this again, freedom of human consciousness, which should be the goal, and that is something again they need to control. I think we just answered Kyle Stevens. Sorry, Kyle. That's not his last name. I just gave out his last name. Oh well. He asked almost the same question. How do you see the control manipulation of humanity originating from the surface level and metaphysical and a point of history? I think we basically just got answered that in that whole montage there as well. Let's see. I got another question here for you. I got to weed through some basic emails here. This is from one of your fellows in the UK, Pippa. No relation to the other Pippa. David, I don't think it's the same one, if you know what I mean. Listening from the UK, really great show with David Icke. Here's the question. In terms of keeping us asleep, keeping our energies low, manipulating our perceived thoughts, I realize the agenda is to keep us low. But is that to simply feed the Illuminati needs, or the need of whatever race is behind the Illuminati, or is there a massively bigger picture that may involve abling the Earth on this part of the universe, sun, to evolve and therefore ascend, and keeping us in this reality enables the denser energies to keep existing? She wants to know, the question is why. It's a little complicated of a question, but I think you got it.
Well, I think in many ways, I don't go for all this ascension area too much, but in so many ways, in the basic themes of the question, I would say all of the above, because, for instance, these entities feed off human energy, and therefore they have to manipulate humans to produce energy within the frequency band that they can absorb. And their frequency band resonates to the frequency band of low vibrational human emotion. All the emotions around fear and worry and depression and anxiety and frustration and all these things. Thus, they have set up society to generate maximum amounts of those energies. I mean, wars, imagine the amount of that energy that is generated by wars. Imagine how much has been generated since the economic crash of 2008. Just as two examples. But at the same time, being in those low vibrational states, while being a source of power, as Morpheus held up the battery in the Matrix and said the machines basically have turned humanity into one of these, that was based on a profound truth of what's going on. But at the same time, if we're in a low vibrational emotional state, we're not in a high expanded state of consciousness. It's pulling us into the lower levels of mind and emotions. And so it has a double whammy effect. And this is why so much time, effort is put into creating a constant, it's like a hamster wheel of things to worry about, things to fear, things to be anxious about, which is going on all the time. It's triggering these energies, and how deep do you want to go? I suppose we've been going a long time, but It's my view that part of this genetic manipulation was to put programs, biological software programs, which are then transmitted through procreation, etc., into what scientists call junk DNA, which is the 97-98% of DNA that don't seem to have a function. Well, some cutting-edge scientists are finding that it actually does have a function, and as I've been saying for years, the junk DNA is driving the reality and perception of that DNA that people think they know about. And I say that within that junk DNA are these biological programs which are constantly generating a default position of low vibrational emotion. And therefore they are desperate to keep us in that state. And in another way, I have been talking for years, nearly 22, 23 years now, about something I call the truth vibrations, which is a vibrational change, a higher vibrational state that is now beginning to emerge. But of course, as this high vibrational state emerges and is demonstrably affecting people, this is why so many people are awakening to so much now that they never would before, you've still got to tune into it. It can exist in the same space that you occupy, but if it's on Radio 2 and you're on Radio 1, you ain't going to tune into it. So there is another benefit, as the question from Pippa kind of mentions there, that if you keep people in a low vibrational emotional state, then they're not going to be impacted by this transformative perception changing reality that I call the truth vibrations, because you're not going to be in tune with them. So all these things are going on, but the bottom line of all of them is keep them in a low vibrational state, and then you got them.
Yeah, Pippa, by the way, says she's going to see you at Wembley. So
I've not looked forward to anything. Perhaps in my the whole of the last 25 years, and long before that, as I am Wembley, because we can make a difference that day by impacting upon these very areas we've talked about today, Jack.
I don't think anything can stop you, though. I think there are some people living in that community, in that part of the world, that would rather you don't play at Wembley. So I hope it doesn't end up like some of your shows in Canada did, and that's but that is something that we grow stronger from if it does happen. I'm going to end on this question from Victoria Pandora. We call our contributors producers on this show. They're not fans or listeners. You know, they contribute, and so we call them producers. And I think that's pretty fair. But this is a great question to end on. And I'm sorry we're not going to get to everybody else's questions. Obviously, David, we can't keep you here for 7 hours, though. I know you would and could do it. But
it's a long time since I've eaten today.
Let me, because you do it for a living, really, and but they pay you, and but I'm going to end on this, and I think that this is kind of appropriate. It's the duality, the dual meanings of things, and I'll read the question, but before I do, I'll give my answer regarding the Olympic ceremonies, David, because what can be seen or used on one frequency, as you call it, to do evil. It also can be good in that. So there's multiple things happening in these so-called ceremonies. So Victoria writes, I'm curious about the various reactions to the London Olympics opening and closing ceremonies. I watched both intently. I found them to be highly intelligent, creative, full of love and admiration in many ways. Why then are they being dismissed as thought control, manipulation, and the attempt to cast an evil spell on humanity? She said she is suffering from some cognitive dissonance on this from the knee-jerk reaction from people, she said, who have not even seen the ceremonies. But there's multiple levels to this, isn't there? Are we saying they're bad?
Well, there's multiple levels to it, yes. And two of those levels are the conscious and subconscious minds. You can see something that appears on a conscious level to be fine. You can see at the end of the closing ceremony. You can see as the flame dies, you can see the phoenix rising in the stadium, which is one of the ancient symbols of these bloodlines. And while it's going on, a pop group is singing a song about ruling the world. And you can think, oh, that's a song by Take That, and oh yeah, there's the phoenix rising, and there's the flame, and the conscious mind can see it like that, and it can enjoy the song. But on a subconscious level, it's saying something different to you. The symbols are talking to you. This is what I tried to get across earlier. There's such a difference between what something says to the subconscious mind and what the conscious mind perceives. And people have said to me, well, I didn't see anything. And then I've taken them through it, and they've gone, oh my goodness, I see it now. There's two levels. And it is right, too, that you can watch these things if you are in a certain vibrational state. They don't affect you at all. Again, Radio 1 and Radio 2. But if you come in with your guard down, not because you're bloody evil, but because your guard's down, and you basically give your attention away without realizing what it's about, then they can on a subconscious level manipulate you. When you have one of the ancient symbols, the most ancient symbols of this bloodline network is the flame of the lighted torch, going back as long as you can track it. And then you have 1 billion people focused on a flame at the Olympic ceremony. All they're saying is, oh, that was a very interesting and creative way of making the flame happen, which it was. But what's happening on a subconscious level? Because that flame you're seeing with the conscious mind is an electromagnetic field which your subconscious mind is connecting to. What's going on with that exchange of communication? This is the level it goes on.
Yeah.
And this is why I understand that people can watch things and say, oh, I thought it was great, I enjoyed it. But when you watch the television advertisements, when you watch the advertisements, see the advertisements in newspapers and magazines, it's been well documented, sometimes in books by people who've done it, that they're full of subliminals. You can actually see them if you go on the internet and put subliminal advertising in to a search engine, and they are designed for you not to see them. That's the point. If you see them, then it's not having an effect because it's only talking to your conscious mind.
Obey.
See them. And then you walk down the aisle in a supermarket, and for some reason you pick up a product you've not picked up before, and you look at it and you put it in the basket. Oh, take this, yeah. What you don't realize is that implant was put in your subconscious in the ads during the Super Bowl or some game show. This is why I say we've got to understand how deep the rabbit hole goes and how it's used. I mean, you mentioned earlier and played a trailer from this film, Branding, and it's all about doing what I've just described. Now, the people who are being programmed in their behavior following that will not, at the time that they're programmed, have any idea that it's happened. And this is what happens in these ceremonies that we see, like the ones in the Olympics.
Well, David, I'll tell you something. It's a good thing we didn't start reading all these letters and questions until we were officially off the live stream. Otherwise, we'd be doing this, there would be 50, 100, 200 of these. But I'll say this, that people are good people. People generally are good. They have good hearts, open hearts, especially if they're listening to you and me right now. I think that they're a little more open-minded and they have big hearts. They're good people. They don't suspect that the art, that this vision and beauty can be used to manipulate them and is something that is greater than evil. So that is, I guess, part of the problem is we almost do have to kind of put ourselves in that mind to somehow understand the depths of the depravity, the evil, and the control of which we face, and then we see it. And then we can live in a world of art and beauty and vision.
Exactly. And the thing is, when people look at a subliminal advertisement and you say to them, can you see the subliminals? And they say, no, can't see anything. Then you point them out and they go, oh yeah. Now, from that moment, every time they see that picture, yep. I know from my own experience, the subliminals will be the first thing they see.
Yeah.
Why? Because it has been brought from the subconscious. This is what subliminal means, below the threshold of the conscious mind, into the conscious mind. And thus the conscious mind can now see the subliminals clear as day that it couldn't see before. And what I'm trying to do, and other people are trying to do, is to get across how this subliminal stuff works, like at these Olympic ceremonies, so that people will get to the point where they become consciously aware, and then they will see it in real time. And very clearly, and that's what happens when you know what's going on. I mean, I know people that have studied this, and myself, I've studied it. And you sit there and you watch these opening and closing ceremonies, and you're ticking them off and ticking them off and ticking them off. People that haven't done that research, not because they're stupid, but they just haven't done that research, they'll say, I can't see a thing. It's the same principle. We need to get spiritual, yes, but we need streetwise spirituality, because there's nothing more manipulatable than genuineness that isn't streetwise. And there's a lot of people out there, you're absolutely right, Jack, who are genuine, who are decent people, but they're not streetwise. And we need to bring the two together, and then will be something that will be formidable indeed for those that are trying to suppress and enslave us.
That's why I love you, my brother, and Maria Heller. She embodies that streetwise spirituality in a way that really hits you upside the head. And you're right. Once you awaken to some of this, and your books are full of this symbolism, and you'll never see things the same again. It is literally the sunglasses that Roddy Piper puts on and They Live, where you can all of a sudden just start seeing all the control, and that in itself has to be balanced and measured so you don't go over the edge. Boy, I could talk to you forever, David. It's always great catching up with you. I wish you the best. I know this Wembley thing is just going to be an amazing thing. I'm going to feel that all the way here in Atlanta, Georgia, where I now live, and I know people are going to feel this all over the world, and they're going to remember who they are. Go check out all of David's great work, where he's going to be appearing. If you want to get him where you live, you can work on that with him. David Icke, I-C-K-E, DavidIcke.com. That's linked at deadlinelive.info. Best to you, my friend, and thank you for being bold and being with us.
You too, Jack. It's been a great pleasure. We've gotten into some very interesting areas. It's been a real pleasure to do.
It's always good with you, David. Thanks so much again for being with us. I appreciate it.
Yes, mate.
And as we always say, stay bold and mighty forces will come to your aid. But as I said to David years ago, and I think he really liked this, is, our dreams are waiting for us to come true. Think about that. Till the next time. We have a great show for you tomorrow. Jonathan Mark will join us from Flyby News. We'll have some 9/11 information. We're already lining up killer guests for next week as well. So hopefully you're getting something original and unique here. See you tomorrow. Stay bold and keep going to deadlinelive.info. Mighty forces will come to your aid. Bye.